Chapter 11, Identity and Quantum Physics. The real I is the I in identity. Dendra is created for each identity you have. The creation of the emotion is the most important thing to understand. Identity being the sameness of essential or generic character in different instances, sameness in all that constitutes the objective reality of a thing, considered to be distinguishing characteristics of an individual. Individuality is considered to be the relation established by the psychological identification on oneself. This relationship and identity is personal and individualistic, each human being having a different relationship established by the psychological identification of themselves. This identity ends up establishing the way we perceive ourselves and oftentimes limits our ability to grow, develop, and become more. The I, being a light-sensitive sensory structure, is the image-forming organ of sight, filled with a jelly-like substance, is lined with a photosensitive retina. The eye is the faculty of seeing, of intellectual or aesthetic perception or appreciation. All the eye can see is what a part of your identity is already. You cannot see what you do not have the dendra to see. You cannot see what you don't already have a relationship about with yourself to identify within or about yourself. Emotion is created from the limbic part of our brain, from a combination of chemical, the result of the affective aspect of consciousness feeling. Feeling being a conscious mental reaction such as anger or fear subjectively experienced strongly and usually directed toward a specific object, typically accompanied by psychological and behavioral changes in the body. Emotion is mental states involving such things as pleasure and displeasure rather than intellectual content. This chemical combination becomes our identity, our individuality, our intellect, perception, and appreciation. The dendrite is the branching protoplasmic processes that conduct impulses toward the body of a neuron. The dendra is the chemical combination. The limbic system is a group of subcortical structures of the brain that are in charge of emotion and motivation. Hypothalamus, hippocampus, and amygdala. This is a part of the central nervous system. Whenever a thought has chemical combined with it, the chemical being the emotion with the thought wave is a stronger frequency and actually imprints upon the cells the frequency of the thought wave. This process makes the thought more powerful. Just thought alone is a greater frequency wave than radio, cell phone, or satellite waves. And the fact that the chemical added to the thought makes this more powerful and even causes an imprint upon the cell gives us some idea of the power of our emotions, what powerful beings we are. Codependency is a psychological condition or a relationship where a person is controlled or manipulated by another who is attached with a pathological condition, as an addiction to alcohol or heroin. In short, dependence on the needs of or control by another. Codependency is full of guilt. Guilt is full of feelings of blame, culpability, fault, the feeling of responsibility for a wrong. Codependency is a result of our having blocked senses in any of our last three senses fired in our firing order. Our first three senses firing is what we present to and view of the world. The last three senses fired is what we present to and view of ourself. It is the first three senses fired, the worldview, that triggers any dysfunctional program model patterns in the last three senses fired, the self-view. When we have sensory blocks, we are vulnerable to another's world and or self-view programs. Generally, the block causing a codependent condition is in the self-view, and the firing order of an opposite order will be the pattern of an individual with this condition will be drawn to. The fact that their first three senses fired in the other individual's worldview will greet the self-view blocked individual with their own self-viewing firing order. This naturally causes the self-view blocked individual to feel naturally nurtured, understood, and respected by the opposite firing order. Sensory function. Taste puts things together, functions, safety and securities, smell, planning, resources. Once cycled through, process goes back to the first sense from last sense fired, complete firing. Actionists think they need more knowledge, when in actuality have their own wisdom and don't need books. First three senses deals with nurtures and environment, others, outside world, objective. Next three senses deals with nurtures, processes, internally, self, subjective. The firing order of each sensory firing begins with the first reference sense. The conscious perceives, evaluates, judges, and decides about it. Second sense fired in the firing order is the decision sense. The conscious perceives, evaluates, judges, and decides regarding the sense and a decision pertaining to the worldview, environment, and objectively, just as with the first and third senses fired, worldviews. The third sense fired is the motivator sense, and the conscious perceives, evaluates, judges, and decides about this sensory data. The sensory firing order crosses over to the opposite side of the body, and the last three senses are fired in their specific order. The last three senses fired pertain again to a self-view, as subjective. The fourth sense fired is the reference sense regarding the self, and conscious perceives, evaluates, judges, and decides this as to reference. The fifth sense fired is the decision sense regarding the self, and the conscious perceives, evaluates, judges, and decides decision of self based upon this sensory data. The sixth sense fired is the motivator sense regarding the self, and the conscious perceives, evaluates, judges, and decides about the motivation of self based upon this sensory data received. Reality principle for the person with six senses. Resources are implied and not talked about in the reality principle. The body teaches the mind about the resources. Sometimes other things need to be addressed first in the reality principle. So what it is they would prefer as their reality doesn't just change because of a thing they do. If the reality principle isn't working when they need to do something first before that reality can occur. Our not knowing the difference between present, past, future, or a vivid imagined experience. The law of correspondence and unity makes reality work. Nurture self when others are not willing to choose to go with you. They choose to stay. When the quantums are not bridgeable, we have resistance in our lives, an act or instance of opposition, an ability by a very nature to go against something. When the associated quantums are bridgeable, we do not have resistance in our lives. Bridging the quantums take you to a point of transformation. When bridging the quantums, you bridge from the left side to the right side, beginning from the top of the map to the bottom of the map, combining wrong with right, self with God, and death with life. Three aspects of being human which correspond are totality, human. 1. Identity, personality, mind. 2. Communication and information processing functions. 3. Creation, body. Each higher level of human functions have the ability of thinking for each of the human functions. The human senses are included in this thinking process. Much of this thinking is done automatically by the subconscious on the TDS through what are known as meta-programs. The unity principle or law, a totality of related parts, an entity that is a complex of systematic whole, unifying aspects of naturally integrating systems. A quality or state of being, not multiple, one identity. This aspect of unity is continuity, without deviation or change as in purpose of actions. Any deviation or change is to be taken back to purpose and multiplied by purpose. The union of parts that are dissimilar, structures and processings which deviate from one another in the same system. Action for deviating structure or process may be taken by an event, condition, or process, and multiplied into purpose and or totality. Event, the fundamental entity of observed physical reality represented by a point designated by 3 coordinates of place and 1 of time in the space-time continuum postulated by the theory of relativity. Events are outcomes, something that happens. The fundamental entity observable with a physical reality, events are done to achieve an end. Condition, a state of being, sometimes involving, adapting, or modifying so as to conform from a previously associated response so the stimulus becomes associated with another. Condition involves circumstances and situations to function. Process. Process involves something going on and is a key in progress. This can be a natural phenomenon marked by gradual changes that lead toward a particular result. Process is establishing a usual routine set of procedures toward an end. This includes integrating sensory information received so that an action or response is generated. Wholeness principle is a unifying force in each of us that holds us together. Inner unification comes from the macro system to live and to grow. A natural desire for wholeness, unification, wellness that comes from each living, intelligent aspect of our being to be whole and healthy and apart with us. This is why what we resist persists, a unifying force that promotes integration of all aspects of our being. This unifying force is of nature, based on our fundamental choice to live. It wants us to live and wants to live as each individual cell, and so nature itself promotes integration of all our parts. Synergy is the whole greater than the individual parts. This applies to everything, the interactions of two or more agents for a whole. Whatever the whole is, there are three aspects that are individual to the whole. Systems working together are synergetic. Systems are enmities or patterns that interact with each other for a process. The relationship between the parts is the fundamental of its processes. The conscious field is formed by a unifying force that is intelligent and aware. An individual's level of personal development can be measured by their ability to perceive the field in self and others and the synergy of the whole based on the correspondence and unity of the individual parts together. When the surrounding plummets, the center collapses, leaving us out of balance or innocence. In no sense, don't recognize it, nor can we pick up on it in any sense. Examples: there are more than you can identify. Nature, structures, patterns, processes. Nature, the inherent character or basic constitution of a person or thing. A creative and controlling force in the universe. An inner force and the sum of such forces in an individual. A kind and class distinguished by fundamental and essential characteristics. The origin of the natural condition. Structure, the action of building, arranged in a definite pattern of organization, the arrangement of particles and parts into a substance or body, organization of the parts as dominated by the general constitution and character of the whole, the aggregate of elements of an entity in their relationship to one another, relates to or being a method in which each step of the solution to the problem is contained in a separate sub-program. Pattern, a form or pattern proposed for imitation, a natural or chance configuration, a reliable sample of traits, acts, tendencies, and other observable characteristics, a discernible coherent system based on the intended interrelationship of component parts, request or widespread incidences. Processes, to progress, advance, ongoing, and proceed. Natural phenomenon marked by gradual changes that lead toward a particular result. A continual natural or biological activity or function. The prominent or projecting part of the structure. To subject to a special process. To subject or handle through an established routine of procedures. Linguistics, symbolic, consisting of, proceeding by, meaning of symbols of, relating to or constituting on symbols. Energetic, energy and its transformations, the total energy relation and transformations of a physical, chemical, or biological system. To impact energy, to act. Whole body, human wholeness. 1. Mind. 2. Emotions. 3. Body. Human system. 1. Identity, personality. 2. Communication, information processing, function. 3. Creation. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 are elements. Letters are their associated functions. 1. Mind, mental, perception filter. A. Identity and personality. B. Data, symbols, letters, numbers, music notes, pictures. C. Models, a collection of the memories and symbols forming internal representations of the memories. D. Structure, arranging in a definite pattern or organization arranged of particles or parts. E. Forming, exploring symbols of possibilities until success patterns are discovered or invented. The essential nature of a thing is distinguished from its matter. Matrix. F. Real, genuine, being what the name implies precisely, occurring or existing in actuality, existing as a physical entity and having properties that immovable things having objective, independent existence, belonging to or having elements or components that belong to the set of real. G. Time, the measurable period during which an action, process, or condition exists or continues, a non-spatial continuum that is measured in terms of events which succeed one another through past, present to future, one of a series of recurring or repeated actions, added or accumulated qualities or instances. H. Symbolic, consisting or proceeding by means of symbols, of or relating to or constituting in symbols. 2. Emotions. A. Communication and information processing and storage. B. Experience and new theories filter. Subcategory B. Dialoguing the data into meaningful patterns such as math, physics, information through processing functions, applying the information into experiences, and creating new theories from the information and experience into meaningful patterns. C. Paradigm. A philosophical or theoretical framework of a scientific or discipline within which theories, laws, and experiments in support of the laws are performed. D. Processes. A natural phenomena marked by gradual changes that lead to a particular result. E. Norm. Repeating experiences and creating new information and new theories over and over. F. Vicarious. Experienced or realized through imagination or sympathetic participation in the experience of another. G. Space. A limited extent in 1, 2, or 3 dimensions, boundless three-dimensional extent in which objects and events occur and have relative parts and direction, can be independent of what occupies or occurs in it. H. Energetic. Energy and its transformation. The total energy relation and transformations of a physical, chemical, or biological system. To impact energy, to act. 3. Body, understanding, and discernment filters. A. Transmission of models, memories, through language and behaviors. B. Knowledge, application, and productive use of information and experiences built from experience and new theories, gaining new understanding and discernments of self and others. C. Worldview, a comprehensive conception or appreciation of the world from a specific standpoint. Walton's Chong. D. Patterns, natural or chance configuration, a discernible coherent system based on the intended interrelated workings of component parts. E. Fulfill, success being achieved, growth now achieved by integrative differences and modifications into the original patterns, attain fulfillment of possible expressions. F. Genetic, of relating to, caused by, origin, DNA, and RNA that determine specific amino acid sequences and appear uniform for nearly all known forms of life. G. Matter, substance of a physical object is composed of material substances and occupies space, has mass, and is composed predominantly of atoms consisting of protons, neutrons, and electrons, that constitutes the observable universe and is indivertible with energy. Whole programs, totalities in the human brain. Any totality consists of 3 separate elements. Each element must correspond with each other element for the totality to be a whole system. As human beings, we are a multitude of separate systems capable of being whole. Here are a few totalities with their 3 elements each. Memory, totality. Element, real, relating to everyday concerns and activities. Seriously, genuine. Element, vicarious. Even that has been deleted. Imaginative or subjective response in experiences of another, occurring, unexpected, or abnormal, another's experience of it. Element, genetic, relating to and determined by the origin, present at birth or development in childhood without needing any instruction, ancestral, inherited, instinctual, or natural. Totality, wisdom, the discerning use of knowledge. Which body of knowledge is best to use where, when. Being wise means you have an elevated understanding of the entire system. Element data, symbols themselves, letters, numbers, sensory symbols such as sounds, textures, temperature, sweet and bitter. Element information, arrangement of data into meaningful patterns, such as math and physics. Element knowledge, the application and productive use of information. Knowledge is built on the models we form out of experience and theories. Totality, data processing. This is the converting of raw data to patterned, readable form and its subsequent processing, such as storage, rearranging, or programming by computer-like systems. Element reception, admission including the act or action or an instance of receiving data for the purpose of forwarding or passing it on. Element storage. Storage is space or a place placing data to become information, a warehouse generally sorted into categories for this process. Element transmit, to send or convey from one person to others through various mediums, even space through behaviors and a variety of signals. Totality metaprograms, indicates a more highly organized or specialized form to a point of even changing or transformation of data and information, a comprehensive, transcending, involving complex, complicated, organized programs to achieve the program's purpose. Element data processing, converting of raw data into readable form and the processings it takes to store, update, rearrange the data, and apply it when and where needed. Element information of patterns and storage, the collection, classification, storage, retrieval of recorded information treated both as a pure and as applied information. Element compressing for model making, to reduce in size or quantity or volume, oftentimes used for computers for programs and files, summarizing data and information to its essential and making a structured design and pattern of it. Totality success, element form, explore possibilities until success patterns are discovered or invented. Element norm, the success patterns are repeated over and over. Element fulfill, success begins to flatten a bit, still rising growth is now achieved by integrating differences and modifications into the original pattern. At this, the system reaches its peak, then begins to decline, having attained its fullest possibilities of expression. Totality, educate, unique qualities, talents of each. Element, a sense of commonality between the individual and their environment, the common thread they have with each other, and a bond with the natural world. Element, a belonging and harmonizing of unique individuality with a sense of commonality. Element, to draw out. Totality worldview, the perception of an individual or group of their environment aspects as this view pertains to their own beliefs, such as viewing themselves in or compared with their environment feedback. Element individual, of or relating to or distinctively associated with an individual, intended for one person, existing as a distinct entity, with distinct characteristics, distinguishing them from a class or collection of others. Element family, sharing ancestry and related in some common aspect with an affiliation and kindred to one another. Element society, companionship or association with one's fellows, a voluntary association of individuals for a common end, an organized group working together or periodically meeting because of common interest, beliefs, or profession. Totality self-view, element me, element myself, element I. Totality reality, the quality or state of being, the totality of real things and events. Element time, a measurable period of time during which an action, process, or condition exists or continues. Non-spatial continuum that is measured in terms of events which exceeded one another from past through present to future. Element space, a period of time, also its duration, a limited extent in 1, 2, or 3 dimensions, a boundless 3-dimensional extent in which objects and events occur and have relative position and direction beyond Earth's atmosphere and solar system. Element matter. Totality time, measured or measurable periods during which an action, process, or condition exists or continues, the duration of which is a non-spatial continuum that is measured in terms of events which succeed one another from past, present to future. Element past. Elapsed periods during elapsed events. References to past might be just gone, existed, or taken place in a period before present. This is associated with the sense of sound and sight and therefore causes our values, meanings, ideas, and concepts to consciously seem past referenced. Element present. Now, and is identified as a division of past and future. Element future. Time yet to come. Measurements of events yet to be, existing or occurring at a later time. Totality communicate continuum. This is the process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system, as a whole, and characterized as a collection, sequence, or progression of values or elements varying by minute degrees. Element transmit. Transmit is simply sending or conveying from one to another person, place, or thing, causing to pass on through any medium available. Element receive. Receive is to accept and acquire, to be a receptacle, to assimilate through the mind or senses. Element message. Any communication generally of an underlying theme or idea and considered to be the purpose of the communication.